back. Nick, what's happening?
Well, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm looking out my window here at a lot of green leaves on trees.
That's nice.
It's going to be almost 80 degrees here today, John.
Wow. And of course, there we're talking about Nashville.
Nash Vegas, baby. That's right.
I don't think I've heard that before. I kind of like
Really?
it.
Oh, that's people used to, before I even lived here, that's what I knew Nashville as, was Nash Vegas.
It's nothing like Las Vegas.
Oh, not at all. I mean, a lot of lights, but nowhere near the amount of lights that you see in Las Vegas.
That.
And there's no gambling.
It's just not as weird as Vegas.
Oh, nowhere. Well,
I mean, it's weird, but it's not
weird is in the eye of the beholder.
It's not as weird as Vegas.
You've seen some of the people we work with. So if you really want to,
I'm granting you the fact that it may be weird, but it's not Vegas weird.
Vegas weird, right? Right. You obviously haven't spent a lot of time on Broadway.
No, I need to spend more time there for sure.
Do you? Do you really?
No. Well, need is a needy word.
Yeah. I have a lot of coworkers reach out to me. We have an office in Cincinnati, very near Nashville, and a lot of people come from there down to Nashville for vacation because it's nice and close, and it's relatively inexpensive compared to most cities. It's changing quickly, but it's still a good place to visit if you're trying to find a weekend away or something like that. So they ask for a lot of advice on where to go, and they're always asking about being on Broadway. Broadway is the main thoroughfare in Nashville. It's where all of the honky tonks and things are. It's Broadway and 2nd Avenue. Those are the two main streets. And I constantly have to remind them, I live here. There's no way in hell you're going to catch me on Broadway or on 2nd Avenue. That it's so touristy. So I try to push them off to other parts of Nashville that are just incredibly cool, with some incredible bars and restaurants and a lot of really great food that most people don't know about, because when they do head to Nashville, they head directly to Broadway.
And that's what they, and I would say that's similar in other cities too, where
absolutely.
You have, especially if it's a tourist hotspot, that, you have the locals who avoid the tourist areas, and the visitors who come in, and that's all they want to see, which makes it difficult. I mean, my son was born in Orlando, and so when we lived there, so he had been to Disney many times by the time he was, 5 years old. But anytime someone would come to visit, they wanted to go to Disney, and we're like, oh, come on, really? Can't we do something else?
Yeah.
But
yeah, when you get to live in a place, you rarely ever experience what the tourists experience. I lived in St. Louis for about 8 years. That's where I went to college. That's where I got my undergrad. And 8 years, not once did I ever go up in the arch.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
I was in the museum below it. Most people don't know there's a museum below it, but I was in the museum below it several times, but I never went up in the arch. And it's not for fear of heights. I have no fear of heights. I would have loved to have done it. I just didn't see the value in it. I remember I had my very first photography class, and I'm not going to say when, but the first thing, take a step back. Most photography classes, when you take them, and I taught photography for a while, and we did the same thing. One of the classes that you end up taking is a nature and architecture class, because you learn lighting out, you learn everything that has to do with being outdoors and how to handle the camera. And it's just a good, easy way to learn, because you're not dealing with models. You're not dealing with anything. You're dealing with what's already there, and you can't change much, if anything, about it. It was the same for me when I took my very first photography class. The very first outing we had, they said, go out, take pictures of everything in the community. But if you take the picture of the arch, you automatically fail.
Why? Because it was so easy?
Yeah. Because it was so easy. Exactly. Yep.
That's
not one of us followed that direction, by the way. We just never turned a picture in of the arch, but everyone went and took pictures of the arch.
The arch is cool. And I have to say, we went there, and growing up many years ago in a small town in Wisconsin, a bus trip to St. Louis was sweet. And so that's what we did. We went to St. Louis, and I rode inside that arch, and it's not awesome to ride inside there because it's tiny, and I'm not. But it was cool. It was very cool to see, and I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, it is a neat place, and the park around it. They've done some improvements in the last couple of years, but the park around it was pretty neat too. And
Nice.
there's a railway that goes under it. Most people don't know that either, or used to.
I did not know that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's like tunnel.
Sort of. Yeah, there's actually a huge cave system under the city of St. Louis. A lot of because which was one of the reasons you had a lot of German immigrants that created beer, Anheuser-Busch. They could keep their beer nice and cool by putting them in the caves. And there's a lot of speakeasies. You can actually, I've never done this, but I've had friends that have. You can get a permit to go from the river, enter the cave system, and walk all the way to the other side of the city. And you'll walk through old speakeasies, old storage places for some of the beer facilities, the beer breweries and things like that. I hear it's a horrible walk because it's full of bugs and dirt and stuff. But it's history untouched, because once Prohibition ended and once modern refrigeration came in, they just left everything. They didn't clean it out. They just left it. So there's a lot of really great history. And of course, the city itself protects it. So a lot of it is still there because you can't just access it without permission or without getting arrested.
I find the story interesting just about the history of the Germans coming in, and they wanted to keep the beer cold, because if you've ever been to Germany, their beer is far from cold.
Well, when I say cold, I'm talking, it's 50, 60 degrees.
Cold, yeah,
it's not, it's not cold, not
but it's
ice
like
cold.
80 degrees when you're in Hamburg. It's ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, seriously. So they serve it in a liter glass or something, as I recall. It's been several years now, but it's warm and it just expands in your belly. And so for somebody from the U.S. who, is used to cold beer, it was not.
And then you throw some really greasy sausages in there in that whole scenario. It can't be pleasant.
I actually just put that right in the beer, and that kind of
nice.
Things out.
Well, it's beer battered brats. You're from Wisconsin.
Hello.
Why do they call it battered? They're not really battering it.
No, you're not. I don't think they do call it battered. They call it.
We always called it was beer battered brats. I mean, it's beer boiled brats, really.
That's really what it is.
Say
and
that
I like the
5 times
alliteration
fast.
too.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's beautiful. and so, as you may recall, our fans, and nice to have plural fans, right?
It is nice.
Unusual for us, so we're a little nervous. But we were talking last about travel, and we focused almost exclusively on airline travel, and so we had a couple
and potty dusting. That was the first thing I thought of when you were talking about warm beer and we added in the brats, the German sausage. Man, that has to create some potty dusting scenarios that we've never seen before.
So I got more feedback on the potty dusting nomenclature than anything we've done. So I need you to explain to our perhaps new audience, who are probably now collectively shaking their head and saying, "What is potty dusting?" You better explain it, since you created it.
But do we really have a clear understanding of what potty dusting really is? Because we had a conversation in our last episode about crop dusting. When you go on an airplane and someone decides to crop dust, which is passing gas as they're walking by you, is crop dusting. And I don't know where the conversation led, but then we went into potty dusting. And I think it was an accident, wasn't it? When I said potty dusting, I was trying to say something else. And
it was a good accident. It was a
good accident. And we couldn't stop laughing about it. So now I think we've just renamed it. I think that's probably a good way to say it. We've renamed it from crop dusting to potty dusting.
And can you imagine the advertising props we're going to get on planes when people just say, "Did you just potty dust near me?"
Well, I think we should get sponsored by Beano. We did mention him in the last episode, and they are the one way to avoid potty dusting.
Well, avoid perhaps, but eliminate not.
Oh, never.
Like the hungover guy who flew next to me, as we talked about. He can't help himself no matter what.
There isn't enough Beano in the world that could help him.
Exactly. So one of our commenters, and a good friend of ours, coincidentally perhaps, Candace said something about our
Candace?
It's Candace, about our air travel segment. And she said we forgot some. And so I just want to touch on some of them specifically. And then we're going to move on from air, because not everybody flies, but some people, especially if you've been potty dusted, you're probably sick of talking about travel anyway. But she said,
and she put it more eloquently than we did. She said, traveling faux pas.
She did say it very nicely, didn't she? Yeah, she's a wordsmith.
She is.
Yeah. Excessive body odor is one thing she said. And I'll admit I've been exposed to that as much as I fly, but I have to say, so I have a lot of Facebook friends who travel as well. And it's usually, ladies, I'm sorry, it's usually women who get the most abuse on planes. And it's probably dudes that are doing the abusing, but I don't get a lot of that, but body odor is never a good thing.
Well, explain that, because I think I'm actually a little bit confused. What do you mean by women getting more, how did you say that?
I don't know how I said it, but brutalized is probably a good way to.
Are you saying they're the ones that suffer the most from the excessive body odor?
Well, I think they suffer from the most from all of the faux pas, as Candace so beautifully said it. They just seem to be on the receiving end of things. And
so you're just trying to be sexist. I understand. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Boom. I dropped the mic, but then you couldn't hear the PoddiMouths podcast.
And yes, some of us who you've just called that would prefer it. So just keep it handy just in case. Yeah,
go on. I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to be realistic that it seems to statistically happen more to women, or maybe they just notice it more and we're all sleeping. I would think that's more of the case, because we've talked about this in the past. I think we talked about this during our pet peeves, which fits right in with this pet peeves episode, that men we're gross. I mean, there's no just as a standard, as a group, generalization. Perhaps, we're just some gross. Of us are trying to take on that. Some of us are. And I'm not saying everybody. I am very cognizant about smells. Yes, you are. And I try. I'll make sure that I don't smell. I do everything I possibly can, but there are. Well, but I mean, really, it's just taking a shower before you get on the plane. Is that a big deal? It shouldn't be. But let's use the example of pressurized tube. Right, exactly. You should be cognizant of the people that you are interacting with and that you have to be around. But I'm sure hungover guy probably didn't take a shower. No, definitely not. And that was the least of my worries with him. So would you ever take your shoes off on a plane? Oh, hell no. I barely take my shoes off at home. Well, but that's crazy to me that someone would do that. Do you know I was on a flight one time and a lady started painting her nails? What? Okay. So that's even worse, because now you've got not only the foot smell, if she's anything like my wife and daughter, the foot smells bad. Yeah. No. It was her hand. Oh, okay. Never mind. I don't know how that just popped in my head as some lady sitting there putting her feet up on her bare feet up on the seats, painting her toenails. If she took off dark socks that, are going to be stanky anyway. Yeah. Well, and then she starts painting her nails. And then I can just only imagine, because I live with two women. What do they do before they paint their nails? They got to remove the old nail polish. So then they've got the really stinky alcohol that they're rubbing on their fingers to get the old nail polish off. Then you've got the smell of the nail polish. And that was all in a pressurized tube, if you can imagine. I can't. I would be so ticked off. Yeah, that was not good. Where else? Another thing Candace said, which is absolutely right on, is when people bring stinky food. Oh, yeah. Onto the plane. And, with airlines cutting back on food or charging for food, I understand the thinking behind it, but when you've got onions and just all peppers and all that stuff, it's just not neighbor friendly when you're on the plane. Exactly. Just get to the airport. If you're hungry, get to the airport earlier, or eat at home, eat there before you get on the airplane, or just bring snacks. I mean, how many flights are so long that you can't go without eating? Or at least without, certainly none of the domestic ones. Right. Or snacking. You can snack. Probably healthy for you anyways. Let's go back to another one of our episodes. Yes. It's better than fast food. Healthy episodes. The last thing, she said other things too, but the last thing I'll mention, feeding into our dog theme that we had before, was when someone brings a puppy on a plane and the puppy can't control him or herself. Right. And that happened to me. Did it really? Oh, well, not on me, but 4 seats ahead, where a puppy peed in the seat, and a lady was, going to sit down on the plane, and she went to her seat and fortunately saw it. But, they had to reseat her someplace. And there are some of those things that are, I guess I'd hesitate to call them thoughtless, but they sort of are. Maybe me-centered rather than thinking about other people around you. Courtesy.
Courtesy.
That might be.
Yep. Absolutely. So, now, that actually made something pop into my head, and I don't know if it's something you and I discussed or if it was just a story I read somewhere about a person who was put on an airplane, had a seat on an airplane, and went in there, and the person before him had some issues. Let's put it that way. I don't remember if it was they shit their pants or if they threw up everywhere, but the airline hadn't cleaned it up, and because it was a quick turn, and they said, well, all of our seats are full. The only choice you have is to either sit there or to get off the airplane. And the airline wouldn't do anything about it. Yeah. And this was big, obviously would have been big news. And it was fairly recently. So of course the person was suing. I would have done the same thing. I'm not quick to suing, but that's pretty, for lack of a better phrase, shitty.
Well played.
I try.
Yeah, I would agree. And I look, if the airline doesn't even, if they don't even just apologize and say, we'll get you on the next flight, we'll put you in first class, we'll buy you lunch or something like that.
Exactly. Right.
I mean, that's the smart way to do it.
Right.
And I believe, look, I think that many airlines, most airlines even, I'll go so far as to say, will probably make the right call in those situations 95% of the time. And unfortunately or fortunately, the only ones we hear about are the other 5%.
Are that 5%
where they mess up. And
I've never had a bad experience on an airplane. I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last episode. If I did, I apologize to our listeners. I had an emergency. It was one of those times I had eaten something before I got on the airplane, and I shouldn't have. And I was sitting there. I was very uncomfortable, and I needed to get off the airplane right before the doors closed. So I stood up and I said, I'm sorry, I have to get off. I can't, I'm not feeling well. And they let me off, and I went up and I went into, I remember the airport. It was the Pensacola airport. I went in to use the restroom, and I got done. And I came back out to the gate and I said, I'm so sorry. I know I've missed my flight. What do I need to do? I'm willing to pay for another ticket, whatever. And I said, oh no, we took care of you. You're on the next flight and no charge. You're fine.
Nice.
And I was like, that is incredible. And that was customer service, and they were perfectly happy, and they were concerned about me. They said, are you feeling better? And I said, yes. And we took care of it. That is good customer service, to return to another one of our episodes. But yeah, so I have to agree with you. 95% of the time you're going to have an experience like that. And it's 5% of the time you're going to have that bad experience.
Yes. And that's why, it's the double-edged sword. Every time any one of your employees comes into contact with a potential customer or a customer, you run the risk of them messing it up. And so you are only as good as a company as they are as your performing employees. They're the face of your company, and you really can't minimize that. It's such an important part. So talking about travel, I want to get in more into your realm. And it doesn't, and I know we kind of, especially when it comes to air travel, we talk a lot about why it sucks, but I'd like to talk a little bit about automotive travel, because it's something, well, certainly both of us have done, and many people are more likely to do probably in cars than they are in planes.
Right.
But what's your take on that, and what things have you experienced that maybe others can commiserate or enjoy together with?
That is a fantastic question. So we drive for work. I mean, I would venture to guess that most Americans probably drive more on vacation or to their point A to point B is much shorter than what you and I probably drive for work. I know there's a good chunk of Americans that obviously travel all the time for work, and quite a few of them probably travel via car. But I think, again, the vast majority of people, when they're doing a road trip, are just trying to get from point A to point B for vacation. So there are a couple different ways we can look at it. If you look at it from my standpoint, one thing I have conversations with some of our listeners too about this, because we have quite a few that are in the same boat as they are co-listeners or their coworkers. eating healthy is probably one of my biggest complaints about traveling by car. It's very, very difficult, especially when you're traveling to some of the smaller towns that we travel to. So we do get into the bigger metropolitan areas, and it's much easier to find healthier food when you do that. But when you're out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Kentucky, it's much more difficult because the only options you really have are Wendy's, fast food, Taco Bell, things like that. So that becomes very, very difficult. So how do you manage that? And there are a few different ways that I think people can manage that. You can bring your own cooler along with you. You can bring one of those mini refrigerators that you can plug into the car power source and bring your own food along with you. But that also depends on how long you're going to be out on the road. So a lot of factors there. One thing I like to do, because I am on the road so much, is I like to, if I have enough time, instead of taking the freeways, I take the back roads. I love seeing middle America. Let's put it that way. I like seeing some of these smaller towns. I like seeing how other people live versus how I live, which, Nashville is not necessarily super metropolitan, but it is a larger city. And I've lived in larger cities, so it's just a little bit different. And I haven't really spent much time in so towns like that, I guess. Does that answer your question, or is there more to it?
Well, for sure it does. I love so I get a little bit boxed up sometimes into just trying to make the best time I possibly can.
Yes.
So I'm less inclined to take the side roads. And it's so stupid. Again, this is probably a guy thing where it's like I always want to beat my last time.
Right.
So I'll lie to myself by, 3 or 4 minutes about when I actually left the house. And, that's a new record.
Yeah. To that point, it's completely the opposite when I'm on vacation. I will do that when I go from my house to, say, my in-laws who live about 4.5 hours away. Both my wife and I will get in the car. We'll get on the freeway. There's no back roading it then. It's let's see how fast we can get there this time without breaking any major speed laws.
Right.
And can we minimize our bathroom breaks? Can we not stop to get something to eat? Can we make it in 4 hours and 25 minutes rather than 4 hours and 30 minutes? It's exactly like that.
Your kids a diuretic the day before so they don't have to pee on them.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
You understand.
That's awesome.
So I can relate. I can relate to that. Maybe
but like you, I do like some, especially the areas you mentioned, Tennessee and Kentucky. And I love the back roads there just because it's a different lifestyle than the Midwest where I'm from, or even Nashville where you're from, that it's just an unusual rural sort of lifestyle. And it's cool. I really enjoy seeing it. And even though, I've grown up working on farms and things like that, it's a little different. And, but I enjoy it. And so I'm with you and I understand the attraction. The healthy eating thing. Yeah. I think we talked about, potentially traveling with a little cooler, and I've also changed the hotel rooms I select usually now to one with a refrigerator and at least a microwave, but usually an oven and stovetop and things like that. So when I get into a town where I'm staying at those hotels, I'll go to the grocery store and stock up on food. Mm-hmm. And it's usually way healthier than you would get at any restaurant, and not that they don't have delicious food at restaurants, but delicious and healthy are not necessarily synonymous.
Right. At least how they make them at restaurants.
Well, that's just it.
Because you can do delicious, healthy food.
Right. It's the hidden stuff that goes in the sauces and whatever they add to it. And, so there was one, and I will not mention the name, but the one chain restaurant that had what I thought would have been a very healthy salad on their offerings. And one that I looked at, that would be delicious. That looks good, healthy, happy. I looked it up, and it showed calories of 1,200 for a salad.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow.
It's just I couldn't believe it. And this is how they get people. How they get people fat. Is you come and the salad was delicious. That was really good. I can't believe I'm eating healthy. And you just took in, 1,400 calories.
Right. Probably calorie wise, you could have had a burger and had less.
Exactly right. So I didn't even know that was an option.
It's very difficult. Yeah. That's probably my least favorite part.
Yeah.
And time of year also plays a factor. When I'm working, I try to get to my hotel in the winter before dark. I'm not scared of the dark. I love the dark. I just feel more comfortable getting to the place that I need to be before dark. Whereas in the summer, you've got a lot more time to do that. So you can be a little bit more purposeful on the way you drive, or you can actually explore a little bit more. I love exploring new places too. So if I get to a city, let's say I make it to one of my former cities that I worked in was Indianapolis. I'd get done with my day. I'd do all my meetings. I'd get back to the hotel. I'd finish up my work, and then I'll go out. And if I'm in a safe neighborhood with good walking paths, I'll go and walk and explore the neighborhood. Or worst case scenario, I'll get in the car and I just drive around and see the different neighborhoods too. I love the freedom to do that. Something I think a lot of times, again, depending on the situation and the city you go to, when you fly into a city, you don't necessarily have the luxury of doing that unless you rent a car. And sometimes you don't want to do that because it's much easier to Uber.
Yep. True story. Okay. So the car travel.
Yeah.
Is so if you usually it's different because I know you usually drive your own vehicle when you travel, right? And I usually drive a rental car these days, at least. And so there are pluses and minuses to both. I like being in my own car because I can stock it the way I want, and I know exactly, you know the car like the back of your hand. When it's a different one every time you get behind the wheel, it's I don't know. It's a little weirder, I guess.
Yeah, in my car, I don't mind if I spill something, and because I can clean it up.
I'm just the opposite. I don't want to spill in my car. I'm going to spill everything in the rental car.
Well, it's not like I want to spill. If I spill in my car, I know that it. First of all, I don't put anything in there that I can spill. I just know that it's more comfortable if it happens, not that it always happens.
Yes.
John making me sound like I'm a dirtball.
When I'm having my third McDonald's shake,
exactly.
I sometimes I spill it because, I'm burping a lot and.
Right.
All right.
But along the same line. So I can, if I'm not renting or if I'm renting a car, then I can't take as much stuff with me.
Right.
So when I travel now, people are going to think I'm weird, but I have a sleeping bag in the trunk. I've got a hammock in the trunk. I've got, I have things and I put it, people look at my bag of goodies that I have in my car and go, why do you have that? It's not like you're going to go camping. I'm like, no, but my thing is if I can't get home for some reason by car, I'm going to walk. My home is my home, and I'm going to get out and I'm going to walk. And I know I'm going to be out in the not wilderness, but I'm going to be walking for a couple of days in most places that I go. So I'm going to take stuff with me that I can carry with me and also use it on those vacations when we do go camping. So it's always in my car.
Do you have
carry my golf clubs in the trunk?
Do you have handcuffs?
I don't have handcuffs. No.
I was just curious.
If I did, they'd be fuzzy and they'd get all matted and they wouldn't work.
I'm very sorry, but that was the vision I got of the handcuffs I was inquiring about.
Where did you have the pink fuzzy stuff around it though? I hope you're envisioning that.
White. I wasn't thinking pink fuzzy. Okay. I was thinking white fuzzy. Okay.
Well, good. Yeah. Good. Making itself a little bit more manly, I guess. Anyway, I carry my golf clubs in the car all the time because you never know when that motivation is going to hit.
Yeah, I used to do that. I don't enjoy golf as much as you do, but yeah.
I never get to play, but they're always there.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
Oh, that's true.
And because we are the PoddiMouths, we do a lot of our recording on the road as well. And we've done it in the past. So I actually I have my work computer and I've got my personal computer that I carry with me along with some of the recording gear. What else do I carry with me? Obviously my suitcase, my computer.
You must have a big trunk.
Dress clothes. Believe it or not, I drive a little Sentra and it has a massive trunk. My daughter's golf clubs are in there too, but that's just because she only plays with me anyways. So it's, I don't need to leave them at home. So yeah, I've got plenty.
I think you'd play more golf if you didn't carry your golf clubs with you.
How does that work?
It's a Murphy's Law thing. That if you didn't have them, you'd get a lot more opportunity.
Probably. No, that has happened. I've been invited to play golf by some of our
sure
dealers, if you put them that way, our car dealers, and after work they said, "Hey, you want to go hit a few?" And I'm like, "I don't have my clubs." So that has happened. So you're absolutely right. And I don't get invited when I have my clubs with me. Anyway, so I load up the car, and I can't take a lot of that stuff with me if I'm going to be in a rental. So for me, driving my own car is much easier. Now, I also have to look at the flip side of that.
Oh yeah.
I'm in charge of all of the maintenance on the car. I'm constantly getting the oils changed. Yep. I've got to get new brakes on it.
You're acquiring the mileage on the car too.
Yep. And I'm acquiring the mileage. So I'm taking a big hit when it comes to trade value. So yeah, there is a downside. It would be nice to be able to go somewhere, just hop into a rental car and not have to worry about all of that. But then, what do I lose?
That's true.
There. Now I don't get to carry as much stuff with me. So
have you ever,
you're absolutely right,
been on a train?
Yes. I love train travel. The two biggest trips I've ever taken, I've taken a few in between, but there was, the very first train trip I ever took. My mom and I took a trip from Minneapolis to Chicago. Mm-hmm. And then we stayed for about a week in Chicago and then took the train back. That was really a lot of fun. The one that I loved the absolute most, it was my mom and myself again. We took the train from St. Cloud, Minnesota. So not Minneapolis, but St. Cloud, Minnesota.
I know the area.
Yeah, I thought you would.
University town.
It is. It absolutely is. St. Cloud State. So we took it from St. Cloud to Essex, Montana. And the interesting thing about Essex, Montana, and I don't know if it's the same way anymore. I do know when we went, there were roads that were in there, but in the beginning, this was a massive hotel. It was a train stop hotel. There were no roads leading to it. The only way you could get to it was by train.
Wow.
We took the train up to Essex, and they dropped you off in front of the hotel. We stayed there for a few days, did some hiking, had some fun at this. It was a really neat place in the middle of the mountains. And then we got back on the train and went back to St. Cloud. And it was a very nice long trip when we stayed in a sleeper car and just had a blast. So I absolutely love that. And now I've taken a few other smaller trips here and there that are a lot of fun. We do the 2 hour, 3 hour trips for like the Polar Express with my daughter and things like that. Oh yeah,
you mentioned that. That's cool.
Yeah. So how about you?
I've taken the tram at Detroit Metro Airport. Does that count?
No, not at all.
No, I actually have been on a few, but limited in my latter adult life. And for no particular reason, I don't have any distaste about train travel. In fact, I would like to do it, but I just haven't taken the opportunity to do it. I guess I'm always thinking of getting in a plane and going someplace warm with white sand beaches, and
it's a lot faster.
Like there are a lot of trains for that.
Exactly.
That's the one I do recall being on was also coincidentally with my mother many years ago when we were in Europe, and we traveled by train from Kristiansand, Norway to, I think it was Bergen, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it was a neat trip and sleeper cars and things like that as well, as I recall.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
That is
that was one thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I said it's always good fun, and the whole thing about trains, it's just you're on the ground, but you don't have to. Well, especially like commuter trains, and we used to take them occasionally in Chicago, and you get to enjoy. And you think the scenery in downtown Chicago can't be that great. It's beautiful. And even coming from the suburbs, beautiful. It's very nice. And you're not worried about, riding in the train. It's akin to taking a ferry across Lake Michigan, which I've done multiple times.
Oh, that would be fun. I've never done that before. I didn't even know that existed.
Cool. There are two of them, actually. One is a a large one that is on the historical registry because it's so old. It's coal fired, if you can believe it. And that will carry a lot of I don't know what the tonnage is, but a lot of it's the USS Badger, as I recall.
That's fitting.
Yes, of course, USS Badger, and it goes to Ludington, Michigan, Manitowoc, Wisconsin. I know a lot about this. And then there is a catamaran which goes from Milwaukee to where Grand Rapids, I think, or Muskegon. And that is much smaller. It only has room, as memory serves, for 46 cars, but it's about an hour faster across the lake than the big Badger is. So anyway, interesting
so
stuff and very cool.
Is it faster to cross on the ferry than it is to drive around?
It's about the same. So Manitowoc to Ludington. And that's, I'm going to just round it off. It's about halfway up the coast of Michigan. And so to get back around there through Chicago, it would, of course, depend on the time of day. If I left Manitowoc at 2 a.m, I could probably make it around by 6 without too much trouble. But,
okay.
Chicago's the crapshoot. You just never know. If I left at 6 a.m, there's no way. I would be stuck in Chicago traffic, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, I guess that's the biggest part of it is just fighting that traffic around Chicago. That's
planning it for sure. And like I say, the beauty of a train like a ferry is that you don't have to pay attention to anything. You can just read or watch movies or whatever, eat.
That was one nice thing that I never got to take advantage of in Minneapolis, as it came in pretty much right after I permanently left. They just put in a whole new transit system. So they have a train that goes all the way out to where my parents lived, all the way into downtown. They have light rail out to the airport as well, and to the Mall of America and things like that. I would have loved to have taken advantage of that. It would have been much easier. My parents lived about, my mom and my stepdad lived about 45 minutes outside of Minneapolis by car. And the train takes about that long to get into downtown from there. So I think, and it's something that Nashville had talked about too. And I think we do need, as we grow, as this city grows, it's something that I think is definitely needed, as our infrastructure is not built for the amount of people that are coming into the city every year. I think train travel, light rail, I think it's really important just to get commuters around, and it would be very, very helpful if we had something like that. Yeah. How do you feel? And we know it works in Chicago. We know it works with the L, and we know it works in New York and some other cities. LA is, I think, putting one in, or has had one, and is revamping it, I guess. What do you think of rapid transit like that, and how does that affect your? Well,
I mean, the idea of rapid transit, I think, is certainly viable for many communities. It's just, the question is, it has to make financial sense too. If it's a drain on the economy, then it's not as necessary as what people would paint it to be. Just for the sake of having light rail, if you can't fill it with commuters, I'm sorry, maybe you don't need a light rail. And there are several examples of that across the country. From they were going to do a train to San Francisco from LA, and they just couldn't justify it based on the number of people, especially how cheap flights are. Who's going to get on a light rail train, even if it's a high speed, going at 80 miles an hour? It's just tough to justify what the cost would be. They were going to do the same thing between Madison and Milwaukee and Wisconsin. And it's a 2-hour drive, maybe something like that, as I recall. And, I'm sorry, that's just driving. What are you going to charge me? And they talked about fees and so on. Anyway, the plug got pulled on that, but it has to be a viable, thing for the community. Otherwise, I'm just not going to why should I pay for people who are going to use it every day if it can't come out profitable?
I think you make an excellent point. I look at cities like St. Louis, who also has a light rail, and I don't know what it was. It is now. It may have turned around, but when I was living there, the only time people seemed to use it a ton, it ran every day. People used it. Don't get me wrong, but it was never packed to the brim, like you see in some of those huge cities like New York or Chicago when there's barely room to stand. So the only time it was ever packed was when people were going to sporting events downtown, because all the games, all of the stadiums are pretty much right next to each other. So very busy at those points of the day. Other points, not so much, with the exception of people crossing the river from Illinois. I think there were a lot more people that were coming from East St. Louis and that part of town into downtown St. Louis via the Metrolink. I think you look at Atlanta. Atlanta's train system is okay. It's always busy, but I don't think it's, at least back when I lived in Atlanta, it wasn't going to places where there were a lot of people that could use it lived. You would have to drive a good distance to get to a MARTA station, get on the train, and then go somewhere. So I think most of the people that used it really used it just to go from one place to the airport and back. So I don't think it was very effective there. But you use Minneapolis as the example. Minneapolis's trains they're a massive hit, and people use them all the time. So I think I 100% agree with you. It just depends on how well the community will adapt to it, and if it's profitable for the city.
Well, and I think, and yes, thank you. I think that's the key. But Minneapolis is a little bit different than some cities in that you have primary destinations. You have the airport. You have downtown Minneapolis, downtown St. Paul, and you have the Mall of America. And those are the primary destinations. Right. And so you can make a business case for those destinations.
And I think they did it right.
If you were going to go,
Atlanta, for example, their trains were pretty much just in a T, north, south, east, west.
Yes.
I mean, that's not where the vast majority of people live. But Minneapolis actually put their trains where people travel.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to me. So Detroit was kind of an interesting thing because, and I won't be long-winded on this.
Oh, come on. I always am. Why not?
It plays into what we're talking about. I don't intend to be long-winded, although it may end up that way.
Well, I never intend on it, John.
I think you do. When you do the big deep breath, I know this is going to be a while.
Or the lip pop that most people don't hear because I take them out when I edit.
The lip pop. Yes, I know. So, yeah, it's like that.
Exactly.
I hear those things all the time when you go through training as a speaker, and you might not think that by listening to our podcast, but I'm a trained speaker. And so you listen for things that you're not supposed to do, or you've been taught not to do, and they become, really
you listen, and it doesn't mean you don't do them either. Because I'm also trained,
well said.
And I still catch myself popping and umming and this and that and stuttering. Exactly. And I'm like, I'm better than that. And it's right after I say it too. It's not like I'm listening to the episode 2 hours later, editing and going, oh, why did I say that? No, it's the minute the word comes out of my mouth or the pop comes out of my tongue, I'm like, damn it.
I think every time, look, I would be supremely entertained if every time you popped, you immediately said, damn it, after that.
I'll try to do that.
From here on out, if you just said, damn it, I think that it's, and just keep going. I think that would be brilliant.
I will try to do that. The only problem with that, John, is I do edit those out for the most part. Sometimes I do miss them, but I do edit all of the pops and the ums.
How many are there? Are there a lot?
I would say I probably pull at least 5 out every episode.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, I'll stop. I'll try to stop doing mine.
No, I don't. Yeah, no.
But it would make it easier if you said "damn it" after everyone. Then you know exactly where to pull them out.
That's true. Well, let's both focus on that. There are times. So I'll tell you, this is probably way too boring for the listeners. The only thing I really edit out of yours is I can hear you do this. It's banging on the table.
Oh,
that's the only thing I ever edit out of yours.
I thought I was like breathing weirdly or something.
Sometimes you do. Yeah.
Okay.
Luke.
Edit that out. Damn it.
Damn it.
I love
that. You ever hear that one, the Darth Vader around Christmas?
No. How do we get to this? Luke. You ever hear that one? You know, Darth Vader around Christmas?
Luke, I know what you're getting for Christmas. Dad, how do you know? I felt your presence.
Wow. Jeez.
Sorry.
That was awesome.
That was a good dad joke.
Did you ever hear that one? You know Darth Vader around Christmas?
We should do a dad joke episode. Listeners, tell us, should we do a dad joke episode? Because I think
that would be good.
do. Most of our jokes are dad jokes.
All of the kids
now,
are
this would
rolling
just be
their eyes right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Most of the adults, too.
Probably. I'm doing grandpa jokes these days, too. So watch out for that. So Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit. Sorry.
No, don't be.
We digress.
We indeed digress. Often.
Often.
The
PoddiMouths motto.
Apparently
that we should change it. I'm sorry. One more digression.
I love it.
We should change that. Our tagline right now is PoddiMouths. Oh wait, I already screwed it up. PoddiMouths, a podcast about everything and absolutely nothing. We should just change it to PoddiMouths, and we digress.
That's good. Or PoddiMouths, you asked for it. Something like that.
But did they? Did they really?
Well, if they're
asking for it now.
If they didn't ask for it, they just won't come back.
Well, actually, technically, yeah. The whole reason you and I started the podcast were people were telling us that we needed to start a podcast because of the way we talk to each other. So I guess they did ask for it, didn't they?
Or they were just joking.
There's no joking in PoddiMouths.
Maybe they were just joking. Maybe they thought, hey, if we can get these idiots to do a podcast, I'll pay you $10. You know, it was like a bet.
Why didn't we get in on it?
I don't know. They could have paid me half and I would have done it.
Right?
Yeah, for $5. All
right, go on. Detroit.
No, I've forgotten. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't forgotten.
Damn it.
So Detroit is in Wayne County. And the next county to the north or northwest is Oakland County. Years ago, back during the boom of the auto industry, Oakland County was, as I understand it, and I could be totally wrong, the third wealthiest county in the nation. And that was at the height of the auto industry. You had not only the automotive people, you know, the Fords, General Motors, Chrysler, and so on, but you also had their suppliers, Fisher Auto Body and some others that were located in Oakland County. And it's like they all lived there, but the factories were in Detroit.
Pause for a second. I have a really important question, John. You've got the Ford family.
Yeah.
You've got the Chrysler family. Mm-hmm. Who the hell comes up with a family name, General Motors? I mean, really?
Yes, it was the General Motors family.
I know. What the hell? Okay, go on. Sorry. Bad joke.
That was worthy. That was, yeah. Hey, you might want to cut that out. Damn it.
Damn it.
Those are just going to be our markers for making cuts from now on. How come we never hear them saying damn it because of that? So Detroit had budgeted money for a train, not unlike Chicago's. And I'm not sure if they were, you know, patterning it after the L or the, I can't think for the life of me of their train system that goes out to the suburbs, but it doesn't matter. I'm not sure what they were patterning it after. They took the money, though, and made what they called the people mover, which kept people on a train all in downtown Detroit. So they had no way of getting the people from Oakland County to Wayne other than to come there for work. And so what happens is you've got all this wealth in Oakland County and a lot of poverty, unfortunately, in Wayne County, where Detroit is, and you could not, never the twain should meet. You could not get, you're welcome. You could not get them to bring their money in on the weekends, for example, to shop or to stay the night or to eat at a wonderful restaurant or whatever, because all they did was went from building to building on the people mover. So essentially that train money just kept people in downtown Detroit, which is in itself, and they've done a really nice job trying to bring it back, but yet they still lack a good transportation system to bring people from Oakland and surrounding counties now into Wayne. And it's hurt the city dramatically.
Well, there are a lot more things that hurt the city.
I don't disagree, but that's certainly one of them where you've got wealth nearby, and in order to even it out for those who would say for social justice, you have to even out the wealth. That's right. One way to do it is to bring those people in and share it when they have the opportunity. We used to do that on weekends in Chicago, where we'd hop on the train, and they used to have a family special for $5. Your family could go back and forth to the suburbs in Chicago for the whole weekend. And so we'd go downtown, we'd spend the night in a hotel and have a nice dinner, and then hop on the train the next day and come home. And it's not a difficult thing to imagine, but unless, you don't see the benefit of getting folks not to just come in for work, but come in and let's make this city better.
Right. And it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, I only get my Detroit history secondhand or from the History Channel. One of the main ideas, or one of the goals that to try to encourage people to come into the city was one of the reasons they built such a beautiful, it is a gorgeous train station. But that's one of the reasons they made it as opulent as it was one, because of all the money, but also two, to try to encourage people to come in to see this place and to experience the city. Am I correct in that assumption? Or?
Well, I would say yes. I mean, there are many ornate buildings in downtown Detroit. The unfortunate part is, unlike any other major city I've been to, which doesn't mean they don't exist, it's just my experience, when you have skyscrapers and every third one is occupied and the others are not, it's just amazing to me. It's occupied, empty, and these are 20-story buildings that are empty in downtown Detroit. And I don't know if they're up to code, and I don't know any of that stuff, but I'm not pointing fingers other than to say, what a shame, because it's beautiful. You're right. The train station is gorgeous. The Book Cadillac Hotel, beautiful. But remember when they were built, they're not recent.
Right.
This Book Cadillac Hotel was probably in the 20s, maybe in the 30s. I'm guessing, but the train station, I would guess, is probably in about the same time frame. And look at how things, and it is. It's the automotive industry that city has lived and died in front of, and that's what kind of defines when the industry is doing really well. They want to build all these opulent buildings, and now unfortunately they just can't keep people coming in there, and they're trying to bring people back, and they've done some really cool things. The Ford Field is downtown, and Comerica Park is downtown, and they're beautiful. Beautiful.
Right. And as you said, they're redoing the train station as well, and making it, from my understanding, it's going to be a tech hub. They're going to try to drive some tech.
They've been working on that for several years. Yeah, they have, and they've had some success with it. So anyway, it's just you look at opportunity like that, and when you travel, it's you see some wins and some losses, and some hits and some misses, and they're prevalent.
Well,
if you look for them.
Going back to an earlier part of the conversation about being able to see most of our country, and one of the easiest ways to do that, and one of the reasons that I do it when I drive, if I have time, is to take the back roads. Detroit is a good example of a beautiful city, an absolutely gorgeous city that was on the verge of dying. It's coming back. I truly believe it's coming back. There's some really good innovation. It's still struggling, especially with the auto industry right now going through a few changes. We're going to see some more struggles coming out of that city, but for the most part, it is on its way back. Will it ever be what it used to be? Probably not, but it's got some gorgeous infrastructure, and some great history, some incredible history. I would love to just be able to go and do a road tour of the entire city, take a weekend or a week, and just see all these different parts of Detroit, or all the different parts of the country. Going back to, again, reverting back to one of our previous episodes, it's that wanderlust. I would love just to be able to hit the road, not to go see necessarily these great landmarks, which would be fun. It would be a benefit, but just to go see some of these places that used to be very influential cities and explore them. I think that would be phenomenal.
Well,
maybe one of our patrons, if we ever get a high roller, can pay for us to do podcasts on the road. We don't need to be visual.
We're going to have to be a lot nicer to them then.
Oh, man. No, they wouldn't appreciate that.
That's true, because then we wouldn't be being who we are. I like your T-shirt idea, though, that you said that you put the lust in wanderlust.
I don't remember having that T-shirt idea, but I will accept it and I will claim it as my own.
Well, I think that would be your own. I mean, that's how it would be. And may I also say Essex, Montana? I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's not even a city. It's literally just a hotel, or at least it used to be just literally a hotel in the middle of the mountains.
And then you could do I put the sex in Essex. You could do that too.
There you go. Exactly. Except that that would be really hard for me, since that was a very memorable trip that I took with my mom.
And you went with your mom. Yeah. So you probably wouldn't want to say anything about sex with your mom.
Not at all. Yeah. There's nothing edible about it.
Wow, well done.
Maybe plenty of edibles, but nothing edible.
Oh, beautifully done. Man, I'm starting to tear up here.
Because, did you potty dust?
No, different types of tears.
Oh my goodness. So what other kind of travel topics do we want to cover?
All right.
We have just a few more minutes left.
This one has been on my mind. Cruises. Have you ever been on a cruise?
I have not, and I have no desire. I think we talked about that in the last episode. You were going to try to talk me into it.
A lot of things that I immediately forget about. So,
well, that's just the type of person I am. I get ignored quite a
bit. No, I just think it's me with my Alzheimer's, probably early stage.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Well, they say memory's the second thing to go.
And the first,
I don't remember what the first thing is.
Yes, there we go. Proud of you. Cruises are interesting, and some of the groundwork. The first one we went on was, let's just say, a lesser expensive cruise line, but it was a very nice ship, and we didn't know what to expect, and it was fine. It was really good. The problem with the first one we went on, it was 8 days, which was okay. And we went over the Christmas holiday. That was a problem. And
yeah,
well, because our son was young at the time, I think 4 or 5 years old or so. And we knew that if we chose that time of the year, and I surprised my wife with it. So I knew if we chose that time of the year that we would have built-in babysitter, grandma, to watch him. Mm-hmm. And so I set all this up and somehow got Lisa to get her passport updated and yada, yada. So thinking this is going to be great. I'm going to be a genius, and we'll go over the holidays and it'll be terrific. We'll come back, spend time with the family after that. And her mom was happy to do it, and we were all excited. And we got there, and Christmas Day, my wife is crying because she's away from her family and our son, and, so that was terrible. However, her birthday 2 days later, we were in where? It just escaped my mind. Anyway, somewhere in the Caribbean. And it was gorgeous. It was just wonderful weather, and everything was beautiful. And she was fine. So it had its ups and downs, let's say, anyway. So that was a difficult one. But
and it wasn't the waves?
The one thing that was weird was the seating for dinner was with the same couple all the time.
I've heard that about cruises.
Now, I'm sure they've changed it. I'm sure that's, there are some where this doesn't apply. But on the one we were on, that was it. We had this one couple, and they were weird.
You shouldn't talk about yourselves like that.
And I don't know how to explain. I'm sure they were nice. I'm sure they're wonderful people. But so this guy, I want to just be delicate. This guy was relatively attractive, I guess, if I could judge it. And my wife would agree with that. And his wife looked like a dude. And she had man hands like on Seinfeld,
Yeah.
And so wow, it was just odd. And she was taller than he was. And they were nice enough, but we ate with them one night. And then we found out that there was an upcharge restaurant where if you pay $25 a person, you could take the elevator to the very top of the ship. And they had this awesome restaurant, steaks and just meals to order like you normally would at a restaurant, fabulous wines. And we found that place and we spent the extra $50 every night from that point on.
I probably would do the same thing.
Yeah. It was just weird and awkward, I guess is probably a good way to put it. And I'm sure they thought the same about us, but, at least it didn't have man hands.
Well, so, and I think we talked about this last time. My issue, I guess, if you want to call it that, with cruises, and other people have argued this with me, saying, you get on a cruise, you get to see multiple places, and then you always have the same room to go back to. You don't have to lug your stuff around. To me, part of the fun of going to visit a new place is lugging my stuff around. I know that sounds sadistic in a way. I know that sounds weird, but I would love to have a backpack with some clothes and my computer and a camera in there and just go and immerse myself in the community and not do the tourist thing. I'm not a big tourist fan. I've always also said, this drives my wife absolutely nuts, I am not a vacationer. I would much rather take a day or two to explore a city during a work trip. So a day after or a day before to kind of explore. That to me is more fun. I'd rather work during vacation. I'm a workaholic in that sense. I can't just sit on the beach all day. I have a problem doing that. So being able to be fully immersed in a culture is more appealing to me than riding on a boat, getting to a place just so I can see the touristy parts.
My argument would be that you need to go to nicer beaches then.
I'm not just talking about beaches, John. Come on.
I understand, but so the argument for it is, of course, as you have stated, that you can, you're in this floating city. And let's just forget about the stories we've heard in the last several years about, all sorts of contaminants and illnesses.
Well, it's that 5%.
Oh my gosh. Again. Well, I think you're probably right. In fact, it's probably even less than that, but still, you hear about that stuff and then you hear no explanation and okay, wait a second. I don't have to cruise. So,
right.
Anyway, I can do vacation on a beach, but it does have to be a nice beach. I'm more of a pool guy though. Cause I don't like sand all over everything.
Very true.
We're weird, I guess, so
we are weird,
but that said, I love looking at the beach. I love hearing the ocean. That's all wonderful stuff, but I'd rather be by the pool and maybe an infinity edge. So it feels like I'm in the ocean, but I'm not really.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, I'm right there with you. I prefer pools over the ocean. Not necessarily if you're talking about beach. Now, would I love to be on a sailboat? Absolutely. There would be the thing that would change my mind. I would much rather be on a sailboat sailing to all these destinations than on a
I would kind of like to try that, I'll admit, but it'd have to be a big one because I've seen way too many YouTube videos of small and medium-sized boats getting stuck someplace and getting hammered in the weather.
Yep.
I think I could do that. I think a 50-foot catamaran, I could handle sailing on that for a week.
I could see you sitting on the bow of a 50-foot catamaran with a sundowner.
On the trampoline.
Which,
don't they call that like the trampoline?
Right. They do, the very front. Yep.
That's impressive. I knew that.
Yep. I don't know what your sundowner would be. Maybe some fruit juice or something, but
some fruit juice. Yes. Anyway, that would be cool. I'm with you. Oh, and I just remembered the country that we woke up in on Lisa's birthday, and that was Barbados. And oh my gosh, it was
nice. Barbados was we flew into Barbados on our way to our honeymoon, which was in St. Vincent, and it was neat. We didn't get to spend much time there, but it was a neat community that we only got to explore around the airport area. but it was pretty neat.
That's awesome. And there are some.
Did you ever go to have you ever gone to St. Vincent?
No. The closest I've been is St. Croix. And I'm talking name-wise, the closest I've been.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to say no. The closest you've been is Barbados.
Is much closer. Yeah.
Literally right next to St. Vincent.
How was it? Was it very nice? I'm guessing.
Well, if you talk about exploring a really neat community, absolutely, it was gorgeous. I've got some great photos of it. It was also where much of the first 2 or 3 Pirates of the Caribbean were shot. So we got to spend some time on the set because a lot of times, they go shoot a movie and then they just leave the set. And the reason we got to spend so much time there is because we took a tour. We were on a separate island called Young Island, and it's literally about 600 yards from the main island. It's a resort community, which is where everyone from the cast stayed because there really aren't. It's St. Vincent is a little bit underdeveloped when it comes to a lot of the touristy things. It has a tourist industry, but it's not as famous as some of the others. So it was cheap, which was one of the reasons. But it was a beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I'm
place.
not familiar.
I'll have to share some.
Yeah, I'm not familiar, but I will definitely take a look at it. I'm sure it's
right. So we did it was a boat and taxi tour. So we took a boat around the island to the set. They drop you off at the set. You're supposed to spend about an hour there looking around, and then you get in a taxi and they do a tour back to the island, and they'll stop you at various places. So we got the boat. First of all, this should have been a red flag. We started the tour, and the boat that we were supposed to get on wouldn't start. So it took them about an hour to fix that. We finally got it started. Then it was neat, and they drove us around and went into a few bays and out of a few bays, and then they finally dropped us off at the filming location, the set, and there was a bar there. So we went in there. No one at the bar. It was just the 2 of us and the bartender, I guess, which is pretty common there. And there was a Rastafarian selling some beads and other trinkets out there on the set. And so we looked around and we waited, and an hour passed. So, okay, where's our taxi? Nowhere to be seen. Another hour goes by, and now we've had a couple of cocktails just to kind of relax. And hour 3 rolls around, no taxi. Hour 4, okay, now we've got to find a phone because our cell phones aren't going to work here. We asked the bartender. They tracked down a phone for us, which I don't know why they didn't have a phone at the bar. So we call back to the hotel, which took a while because we didn't know the number and couldn't find, they didn't have yellow pages. So we tracked that number down, called the hotel, and they're like, "Oh, we're so sorry. We'll call the taxi." And it turns out that the person booking the trip for us never called to schedule the taxi to pick us up. So no, I remember. Okay, so that happened, and then they were going to say, "Well, we'll try to find a taxi because it's not like they can just call a taxi company. They're all individuals." We actually happened to have the phone number of the taxi driver that took us from the airport to the hotel or to the island originally. So we called him, and he came to pick us up. And the island said, "We'll pay for it." So they covered it, and he actually took us on probably what was a better tour than what the original tour was set to be. So he took us to some churches that were private churches that we could go in and take pictures of. He took us to downtown Georgetown, and I think it's Georgetown, whatever the main city was in there. And he took us to some neighborhoods around the area so we could kind of see what it was like to be a resident of St. Vincent, which is a very, very poor island, by the way. I know all of them are very poor, but this one is exceptionally poor. So it was a fascinating trip, and it was so much fun, and we got a lot more out of it and a good story out of it than we probably would have.
Well, and to have somebody who's a local, showing you around and showing you things that of interest, that's way more impactful than, something that's planned on a tour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool.
So it was a good experience. It was a lot of fun. We spent some time the other days in the city, and we stuck out like a sore thumb because we're white Americans, and St. Vincent is the majority of St. Vincent is of African descent. So a lot of black people, and we got a lot of funny looks because they're not used to a ton of tourists. I think that's changed a little bit now. Bequia is more of a touristy island, and it's it's St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So it's one country. And I think there's 8 or 9 islands that make up that whole community. And it's an English, part of the English or the British Commonwealth. So, yeah. So I think Richard Branson might own an island over there, or some other big British people own islands and parts of islands, big estates on the other islands, just not on the main island of St. Vincent.
Well, I will have to do some research because I have not. And as you say, if it's not very well publicized as a destination, then, you know, I understand, because I don't have any recognition of where it was. And that was not unlike when we went to St. Croix. Most people will go to St. Thomas or St. John even. And St. Croix was actually very interesting. And we very much enjoyed it. It was an anniversary that we decided to go there. The driving on the left side of the road was interesting. But it wasn't so crowded that, you know, you'd be afraid to do it. The problem was the cars were still U.S. left drive. So
that's weird.
It was weird. I would have much preferred to have a right drive on the left side of the road. It would have seemed a little more regular, I guess. But on the other hand, I was very familiar with the car. It's just, okay, remind yourself to go on the left side of the road. It was quite interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. If you get a chance, Jon, on my personal Facebook, which I'm sorry, listeners, you probably, if you know us, you can go see it as well. But if you go to my personal Facebook, you can actually go to photos and go to honeymoon photos, and it's a whole bunch of pictures of St. Vincent.
Well, you should post one, an innocuous one, maybe, where you have clothes on the PoddiMouths page.
Right. Well, but that's no fun. I'm going to do a nudie booty.
If you decide to friend them, then they can see all of them. But try to do one with clothes on, maybe just a sarong or something.
Most of the pictures are of my wife. You see very few, if any, of me.
You're not a big picture. You've talked about that before, and but I have managed to find a couple of pictures of you with your daughter, for example, and those are awesome.
I do it every once in a while. I know that I'm going to get more likes that way.
With your daughter, yes, no doubt. Yes, no doubt. Oh, dude, this has been fun, and
it has been fun.
I hope for our listeners they have also enjoyed some of our travel travails.
Yes, quite a few, and we'll probably do some more, because that is, quite honestly, a very big part of our lives, work lives, and personal lives too. We do travel quite a bit. Not as from a personal standpoint, I wish I could travel a bit more and do things that I've wanted to do. The bucket lists, which, by the way, listeners, I think one of our future episodes is going to be about bucket lists. Jon and I had discussed that as a possibility, because there are quite a few things out there that I think both of us would like to do. Some big things that may never happen, some things that are definitely attainable, and then some things we've already accomplished. So I'm hoping that that'll be one of our future episodes. So along with travel and with bucket lists, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave comments on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere that you can find us. Send emails to poddimouths@gmail.com. And of course, you can always support us at Patreon if you want us to keep going with this, or if you want to hear more content, you want us to start publishing more. That would be the way to do it. If we can make enough money where we can quit our jobs and travel for a living, then we'll definitely do that for you. And
surprisingly, it wouldn't take that much, right?
No. A couple of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year each. I mean, we could definitely do that.
Wow, I'd do it for less. I'm going to just try and undercut you to see if I'm going to support Jon so just he can quit.
Wait a second. Then I could teach you how to edit the pips and the pops. We just, the damn it will definitely help. Damn it
will help. But I think the point is, I think my bosses might give us Patreons as long as there's a chance I might quit.
That's true. Very true.
I'm going to keep playing that up.
All right, my friend. It was great to talk to you all, and I look forward to talking to you, Jon, on our next PoddiMouths episode.
Thanks, Nick. Great to talk to you, and thanks, everybody. See you soon.